series. At the beginning of this section, of this section of the class, we did one day where we began with, I think it was last Wednesday, we began with the Sang cleansing offering. Then we did the Bodhisattva's confession, which is also called the 35 Buddhas confession. And then we did the guided Vajrasattva meditation. And it was in that context that I talked about how one way to relate to these three practices that we've been doing is to see the first practice of the Sang offering as cleansing and purifying and removing suffering on the external outer level, which then is related to this level of vows of training, like the 5 lay vows, like the monastic vows, all of those. They are called individual liberation vows. Individual in the sense of like they pertain to the individual, that if the individual keeps this set of vows, then they free themselves from the causes of suffering. And so individual in that sense, and individual also in the sense of, it's very exact, it's very precise, for this problem, this is what you have to refrain from. For this problem, this is what you need to refrain from. So it's called individual liberation vows. So I said the Archi practice and Archi cleansing practice, you can relate to it as, helping us to protect that outer level of vows, where it has to do with not only, although it's called individual liberation, it also involves other people. So it's more focused on our actions and the impact of our actions on others, and how through the interaction between us and others, either suffering or happiness results. And so if we don't want suffering on that level, then we have to be circumspect about how we present ourselves to the world and how we interact with others. So in the Sang offering practice, we did this morning at the temple. So I was there, then I came back to do this. So at the temple, we did a longer Sang cleansing practice. You can go listen. It was put on Facebook, the Urban Dharma Facebook page. I gave a teaching on that, explaining in more detail this practice of Sang cleansing. But in a nutshell, it's about on the kind of surface level, it refers to many supernatural beings that may or may not resonate with you, because they're Tibetan names or Sanskrit names. You're like, I don't know who they are, I don't know what they are. But to me, I think the mistake that we sometimes do is like we try to figure out all those names, and we think that it's really important to know who they are and what they are, and then we lose like the spirit of the practice. I always said that Vajrayana in Tibetan things, it's like a big ocean. It's easy to drown in it, but if you know how to swim, you can find all kinds of things in it. And sometimes people drown in those details, then they forget, like what is the essence of this, So you don't need to take so literally, Now, if your life experience, allows you to take more literally the existence of these unseen forces and beings, then perfect, this kind of practice, this kind of liturgy. If your life experience, doesn't, your cultural background doesn't, then it doesn't mean, there's nothing for you in this practice. Then this practice can make you more aware And also why you want to be more aware that it's not just me, it's not just us. Seen and unseen, there are so many dimensions to what's here. I just ordered a book that I want to take with me to Asia. I chance upon this. I chance upon this on BBC. I wake up to BBC in the morning. BBC International. I don't know if it was on BBC or on NPR. Let's see. The book I want to share with you. It's not a Buddhist book at all, but it was fascinating because it of course it feeds into the way I talk about these things. It's coming out on Tuesday. This will be released on Tuesday. So, and it's called An Immense World. Yeah, that's the title. Some of you might want to get the book. An Immense World. How animal senses reveal the hidden realms around us. It's the longer title. By this guy called Ed Yong. Yong is a Chinese name. A winner of a Pulitzer Prize. He had written about the pandemic. I think that's where he won his Pulitzer. He's a science journalist. Might be English, Chinese. His accent I couldn't quite place. Yeah, so the New York Times bestseller say a thrilling, dazzling tour of the radically different ways that animals perceive the world that will fill you with wonder and forever alter your perspective. That's the point. Yeah, that's the point. Yeah, recently, an acquaintance of me on Facebook has, I guess, I don't know what you call it, an awakening of sorts. But this awakening is an awakening that sent him in the direction of, I need to be rational and consistent with my thought system. And he's saying, he's an acquaintance. I've met him maybe only once or twice, but Facebook is, whatever people say, about Facebook, one thing I can tell you is they're not very good at figuring out people. They highlight my Facebook friends that are people I barely know. I don't really care what they're doing. They don't even figure out that simple thing about, what are real friends and what are just people who say, I want to be friend, and you click, and the feed is always of all those people, like half the time it's in Vietnamese. Like I don't read Vietnamese. I don't know what they're saying. Anyway, this one person, he started in the Tibetan Buddhist tradition and got very involved and somehow, but it's unfortunate because some very disturbing scandals hit that community. Then the teacher passed away, and it was never quite processed. Then he also moved away from he wasn't at the heart of where the problems were as a satellite center close to Asheville. Then he moved to California, job move, and then got further away from the community. And so now he's processing. I get it, what's going on, and in his processing, he's basically like, I'm done with this stuff, and he wants to be a secular Buddhist. So in working through all of that, he wrote about how a belief in magic is like, I don't believe in the supernatural anymore. I don't believe in magic anymore. La 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 la. This is all inconsistent, and said how in the past I have just bracketed things away. I want to be Buddhist so much that I thought I have to believe these things, and then so I believe them. Now they're not true. And then the next thing is he's giving away all the statues, all the tankas, And then he writes more and more about how it's irrational to believe this, it's irrational to believe that, and this and that. And I cheekily wrote, falling in love must be the most rational thing to do. Right? Poetry is so rational, you know? Imagination is so. And this is not blaming him. I think it's really how this is a warning for many of us to, right? When we relate to a text, like a song text, where it's filled with supernatural entities. Some of them are deities you invoke to bring here. Some of them are a class of beings like Nagas and Maras and this and that, right? That you should not, like relate to it like I either have to believe or I don't believe. Like whoever approaches poetry with believe, don't believe. It's just the wrong reference point, wrong context. Yeah, so growing up in Malaysia, growing up in Asia, I don't see so much of my friends, even now, having any crisis of like, oh, the spirits don't exist. You hold a gun up to them and ask them, you believe spirits exist? They'll probably say, no. I like to tell this this anecdote. It was in an anthropology book that I read in graduate school. It was a book called by a famous anthropologist that worked in Taiwan, an English anthropologist, Jordan, I think is his last name. He wrote this book called Gods, Ghosts, and Ancestors. Gods, Ghosts, and Ancestors, which is the three categories of the supernatural in the Chinese world. So he did his dissertation in rural area in southern Taiwan. Not rural, just not fancy big city, in a township in the south of Taiwan in the 70s. So still, at that time, Taiwan was under military rule. So he was there, he was doing his, field work and everything. So he said that, like any good field worker, you embed yourself in the community, but you also start asking people dumb questions, right? Because if you're not willing to look stupid, you can't be an anthropologist, which I am not able to. Too much ego. So bad anthropologist. So he comes up with a list of questions about the supernatural and various other things, and he sends it out to all the villages. And so he gets them all back, right? And the list of questions, there were maybe like 20, 25, So meaning it's not just one glance, right? You have to go through. So people diligently answered those questions. And then he tallied them up. And this is quantitative. Just yes, no. Yeah. Just yes, no. So it's like, do you think blah, blah, blah? Are you blah, blah, blah? Like, are you male, female? Just, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. So somewhere in the question, do you believe in ghosts? Yes, no. Further down that list towards the end, do you believe that ghosts could be a source of mishaps? Yes, no. The percentage that he got for that answer doesn't match the percentage of do you believe in ghosts. So there are way more people believe that ghosts is the cause of mishaps than people who believe that there are ghosts. This is human. These are humans. How beautiful, right? How beautiful. I don't need people to be consistent in the way that, in that way. Please continue to be inconsistent and messy, makes it a much more, not only a much more interesting world, it also disabuses us of the idea that I am right all the time. That what I see is what there is all to be seen. What I taste is all that there is to be tasted. What I hear is all that there is to hear. You know, so that book I just talked about, you know, scientifically is telling us that's not true. That's simply not true, you know. Then it helps us to not be so rigid. And the side effect is it brings wonderment into our lives. So I digress as usual. So the Sang text, the cleansing text, it's about the external, our impact on our external world, and how that external world in turn, right, responds to us. So the happiness and the suffering that comes up out of that. So that's the first layer of cleansing. The next layer of cleansing of karma is related to our bodhisattva vow, the inner layer. So there is talking about not even, you know, if the first one is more about how do I protect myself from suffering, how do I create more happiness in my life, the next one is how, and already in the first one it already brings in the relationship with others, but nonetheless on the first level it's still more parked on your end. Yeah, even though you take into account that, because often, right, on the outer layer we almost exclusively operate on the premise that whatever happiness and suffering other people bring to me. When they bring happiness, I say I deserve it, or I have a lot of gratitude. When they bring suffering, you know, I'm always innocent. When anyone brings me suffering, I'm always innocent. It's always unfair. And they're always troublemakers. They always like to make things complicated, whereas I'm very simple. So the first layer, we try to fix that, but it's still kind of focused on ourselves. The next layer with the bodhisattva vow takes us further, now saying, you know what? You should stop trying so much to manipulate what's outside. You should really work on the inside and understand that when the more you work on the inside, based on the motivation of ultimately helping others, then you can actually make the changes that matter. See, this understanding of bodhisattva vow is the understanding based on the sutras and the tantras and the commentaries. These days, it is extended into, and here is a big footnote, is extended into many different realms of human activity and involvement, you know. I'm not saying that it's wrong. Yeah, signing on to volunteer at, you know, an animal shelter, signing on to tutor, you know, kids from the inner city, signing on to campaign for the environment. All that is really needed. Our world is so, you know, if you're motivated to do that, that's really good. But that is not yet bodhisattva practice, okay? It doesn't automatically make that bodhisattva practice. Bodhicitta, mistranslated as altruistic mind, because altruism is only one aspect of bodhicitta. The other aspect of bodhicitta is clear understanding, developing clear understanding, developing clear seeing. That big word called wisdom. It's about seeing clearly. So the seeing clearly, like if you just look at Bodhisattva's way of life, Shantideva, the classic on Bodhisattva training, he says, you train yourself, you train yourself, you train yourself. Okay. For example, he says, the perfection of generosity is not perfected when you have finally met all the needs and the wants of all beings. You do not perfect the perfection of generosity by trying to fulfill the needs and the wants of all sentient beings, because it's impossible. He says the perfection of generosity is not even a speck of self-centeredness exists in you anymore. That is when generosity has been perfected. That is when giving has been perfected. Because then at that point, it's spontaneous, What you will do, what you can do for others is spontaneous. It's naturally unfolding. Disciplined conduct is based on the central idea of not causing harm. You cannot achieve that perfection by running around trying to get nobody will meet any harm. Again, footnote, yes, you can volunteer your time, right? To campaign against landmines. Why not? Very important, very good. But again, the end result of not harming, right, can only be achieved by not a single speck of the desire, the ability to harm others exists in you anymore through disciplined conduct.
Dr. Lye, is perfect generosity number 4?
Generosity number 1?
Number 4. What was that? Did you say the 4th one, or is that still on bodhicitta?
What do you mean number 4? Did I say number 4? See, I don't remember what I said.
Okay, you said that there are 4 levels of the cleansing of karma. First one
3
is protect
levels.
self-obsession.
3 levels. 3 levels. Outer, inner, secret. So now I'm talking about the Bodhisattva's confession, which is the second. Yeah. Yeah?
Thank you.
Yeah, and the 3 is related to the 3 practices that I've been doing in this Monday to Friday morning class. Dix was asking before I got here and sharing, or rather chancing upon a recording, and I'm giving a explanation of the recording, I suppose. And so then the second level is the Bodhisattva level, is the inner level, is the inner cleansing. So the 35 Buddha confession, I suggested to the group that you can relate to it as now inner cleansing. More deeply working on ourselves, but completely, well, of course, at the beginning it's not completely, at the beginning it's intellectually, at least intellectually appreciating this is for all beings. The practical effect of thinking, just even thinking like this, I'm doing this for all beings, is so that, in your working on yourself, you don't become spiritually narcissistic. That you remember, wait, hold on. Why am I doing this? Oh, gosh, for others. Okay. And also not to give up so easily. For the goal of accomplishing one person's wish, How much effort am I willing to put in? Oh, this much. Now, for the goal of accomplishing the welfare of infinite sentient beings. Oh, I tried 2 times to go, didn't work. Sorry, not going anymore. I tried to register for this thing, both times got kicked out. I'm not going anymore. Meanwhile, your kid wants a Taylor Swift ticket. You stay up all night. See? I don't want you all to feel what I'm going to say next. In the past, I've given the example. I say, and the example I say is this, you want to know what is your object of refuge at this point, in your life. Yeah. Next time you come home from going out, maybe after you've been out most of the day, you pause at your door before you go in, breathe, slow down, and you say, now I'm going to do an audit. No need to write down, just mentally do an audit. I'm going to walk into the house and I'm going to look. How much of my material and mental resources have I spent on what objects I see in my house? Then we know where refuge is. This is not to make you feel bad, This is not to encourage you to go to tibetanspirit.com to start shopping and buying my stuff, It's really not about that, but it's a good indicator, 60-inch TV, yeah, sure, why not, Oh, that 6-inch Buddha statue, I don't know. It's kind of big. Also kind of expensive. I don't know. Again, it's not to encourage spiritual materialism, but these are good. It kind of, like it tells us, oh, okay, well, my refuge is donuts, Mm, yeah, so, kind of. So the bodhisattva level of training, really, it's, bringing it back home, and then remembering, it's for all beings, so that then it has to translate, when I go to the Dharma center, when I go to the temple, when I go to the monastery. Yes, I'm there to nourish nourish myself. But what is that for others? Of course, there's a limit. Yeah? But if there's some disruption going on in the temple, whether it's kids running around or someone being disruptive, right? We should not forget bodhisattva vow. Yeah. Again, within limits, And then if you're part of the temple center or whatever leadership, you might have to intervene and do something if the disruption has now, kind of gone to the side of like making everyone feel unsafe. But otherwise, we should be tolerant of a kid, making noises that you're not used to when it's meditation time. Because if we alienate the kid, they are not going to come back. Their parents will feel bad about coming. So we try to, embody, right, these vows of the bodhisattva. Then the third practice we've been doing is a guided meditation on Vajrasattva. And this Vajrasattva meditation, in particular, more generally, there are more specific things or levels of working with Vajrasattva, but the most general level of working with the Vajrasattva practice is that of purification. So you visualize Vajrasattva in the space in front of you, and then from Vajrasattva's heart, this elixir or nectar of primordial wisdom, falls down like a cascade of water, washing you all on the outside and on the inside, and you become clear of all the obscurations, especially they say Vajrayana Samayas. So that's the corresponding with the third level of vows, which then you could say also corresponds to the most subtle types of karmas. So the outer karma, immediately you can see more easily because it more easily can be observed in how people react to you. So that's the gross level of karma. The more subtle level of karma is inside. It's watching your reaction, watching how you respond to things appearing. Then this Vajrayana level of training, the samayas. So the samayas, there are many, literally it means commitment or bonds. But the key samaya, so to say, is the samaya of pure perception. That's why we practice deity yoga, is to train us to see the innate purity of all phenomena, including our minds and the minds of all beings. Pure means what? Pure means empty. It's just a Vajrayana code word for what's normally referred to as emptiness. Empty, again, emptiness, right? Doesn't mean don't exist. It means don't exist the way you think it exists. So it's empty of the essence that you project onto. That all things are empty of that projection from their side. They're empty of that. If they seem to be there, it's your perception, or more accurately, misperception. So we practice deity yoga in order to train and to habituate our perception. Our perception on the form level, our perception on the voice level, our perception on the mental emotional level. So body, speech, and mind samayas. Those samayas, those bonds are the most fragile of all three levels. The outer level of how we carry ourselves in the world, how we relate to others, most of us have some semblance of ability to do that. Some of us better than others. Some of us have more filter than others. That's part of the being in the world, how we present ourselves, and immediately getting a positive or a negative response from others. So that level is not so hard, although it takes discipline too, it takes mindfulness too, right? Then the inner level of like bodhisattva training, that gets harder. Then the samaya level, the vajrayana level of pure perception, very hard. So we have to do Vajrasattva as a way to amend the breakages, to amend the damages that we do to these samayas. The great Indian master Atisha, who is the source of the Lojong teachings that we're looking at, he said, when I was merely training at the beginning, when I first went to the monastery, when I was just merely training on the level of the first level, in his case, it was his monastic vow, his monastic training. And a big part of monastic training is monastic deportment. You know the word deportment? Yeah. So how you carry yourself. So monastic deportment is one major area in monastic training. Right? So that's why I think like the word Shila, right, translated into English as ethics or morality, don't capture the whole range of that body of training. Right? It's not just the obvious moral, ethical things. It's also about deportment. Right? So it's more subtle than just morality or ethics. So these days, I like to translate that as disciplined conduct. Disciplined conduct. Anyway, Atisha said, when I first, joined the monastery and started training, in the twice monthly purification ceremony that monasteries, in theory, have to do, but these days many monasteries don't actually do that. That's also the reality. But a very strict, well-trained monastery, they would do that twice a month on the full moon and new moon. And so what happens there is that whatever lapses since 2 weeks ago, kind of like Catholic confession, you have to go before another member of your community, the same community, and confess. So every 2 weeks. So Atisha said, every time this occurs, I have something to confess. Then he said, when I then took the Bodhisattva training and the Bodhisattva vows, oh my gosh, he said, every 24-hour period, I have something to confess. Because according to the Bodhisattva vows, it's every 24 hours, you need to take stock. How have you damaged your Bodhisattva resolve in the last 24 hours? Then he said, and then when I receive Vajrayana training and the Samayas, he says, between one thought and the next thought, I have something to confess. It's karma on that subtle level. In the Chinese tradition, it says, once the mind moves, that's it. Samsara has escalated. The minute the mind moves, samsara has escalated. And that's Vajrayana Samaya, because to perceive everything as pure, meaning everything, or more poetically, everything as deity, all sounds are mantra, and all thoughts and emotions are love, compassion, and wisdom. Yeah, this is the three samayas of body, speech, and mind. What is it saying? It's basically saying, don't let it turn into samsara. Then from the Chinese side, Chinese Buddhism, in the Zen tradition, it says the minute the mind moves, move from what? Move from resting in its own nature. The minute the mind moves, samsara has escalated. That's it. So that's why Atisha said, between one thought and the next thought, I already have some samaya damage. Need to do damage control. Now, all of this that you hear, yeah, you cannot listen to this with a narrow, paranoid, impatient state of mind. Then the more you hear about this, the more dreadful you're going to find yourself in. You also need to be expansive. I was reading another, I don't know where also, an editorial. Maybe it's in Atlantic, I think. a psychotherapist talking about seeing more and more people articulating the burden of feeling that they need to be good people, that has turned into a burden. Yeah, and people walk around feeling bad for being bad people. That's the other side to this, you know. I see a lot of people, they're so thoughtful. They come to the Dharma Center and they want so much to be good people. But if you're not skillful about this, it only leads to more suffering. So relax. Sometimes the teachings, you know, like the three, right? 2 weeks, you know, something to confess. 24 hours, one moment to another. Then you hear this, you know, I gotta. No, it's not like that, you know. You learn, you listen, you take in, you digest what you can. You take what you can. You take what you can and knowing that there's more to take. Yeah, leaving room for the ability to digest more, to take more. But you cannot bully yourself into enlightenment, much less bully other people into enlightenment. You cannot shame yourself into enlightenment, much less shame others into enlightenment. You cannot guilt yourself into releasing, much less guilting others into releasing. It doesn't work like that. Yeah? At the same time, it cannot be, oh, anything is fine. Anything is fine. Very quickly, nothing is fine. Yeah, so maybe this is today's program already. Questions, Dix?
I actually do have a question, and I very much appreciate your expanding on what I saw, because it was quite, I really enjoyed it a lot, and you helped with this, with expanding on what I viewed. So I guess my question is, what if I don't every 2 weeks, or what if I don't participate in that cleansing process? How do I, what do you, where do I go from here?
Oh, yeah, there are so many ways to, you know, as long as you are doing some kind of regular practice, you know, all practices is to cleanse and to, you know, it's basically to remove these unskillful actions of body, speech, and mind, to avoid them, and to engage in, you know, skillful actions of body, speech, and mind. Yeah, so just know that, you know, there are these things, and pay attention, you know, but don't fixate, right? Yeah, it's a balance, you know, between paying attention and not fixating, and not paying attention and becoming careless. Where is that line between being careful and being paralyzed? Nobody can tell you where that line is. But you need to recognize that there is a line where you have crossed into unskillful, skillful and unskillful. So even just, you know, mentally, they say to even just recognize a fault as a fault, you have already started the purification of it. It's when you don't recognize a fault as a fault, or worse still, you know, you turn the fault into a point of pride, then hmm, then it becomes more and more easy. First time you kill is hard. Second time, a little, maybe a little harder. Third time, less hard. First time you steal is hard, and then very soon, you know, It's second nature, and then just because it's become second nature doesn't mean it's not creating suffering, you know. But there are other qualities, other things that you do often, and then it becomes second nature, and it is part of your nature. Those things, you know, love, compassion, all those, right? You know, there's no guilt there. There's no shadow there. It won't come suddenly to throw you into darkness. Whereas other types of actions and things that, you know, even if you feel like it's now second nature, but they could be, you know, they're damaging and unskillful and unhelpful. And so having, of course, then that's the rationale for having a daily practice. As daily practice, you can look at it as simply giving yourself a break from the routines of life, the demands of daily life, giving yourself a break to check in with yourself, with the Buddhas and the Bodhisattvas as your friends, you know, like time to check in. And by checking in, even recognizing, not just faults, you know, recognizing skillful, virtuous actions as skillful and virtuous, that grows as well. So in the Buddhist tradition, we don't really have teachings such as, you know, when you do good, don't pay attention to the good that you have done. No, actually, we say rejoice in it. We don't have a tradition of like hide your good deeds. There's a good reason, you know, like when Jesus was like criticizing, what he was criticizing at the temple was hypocrisy. Yeah, a public display of piety, masking, right? All kinds of hypocrisy privately. But that somehow has turned into people being shy and even feeling guilty if they feel good about, you know, something good that they have done. In the Buddhist training, you know, no problem with that. Although even that, I've seen people misinterpreting Buddhist teachings to reinforce that kind of, you know, Christian baggage. To feel guilty about having done something good and rejoicing. Oh, that's ego, that's ego. I really dislike that word, actually. In Buddhist circles, in Western Buddhist circles, ego, 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 ego. It's too big a word to blast everything away so that there's no space for nuances. There's healthy ego and there's harmful ego. We need to build a healthy sense of ego, the way that Western psychology talks about ego. We need that. Not just because we're Westerners, Asians too. Human beings need healthy egos. Healthy ego comes from, and the Buddhist tradition is built on the basis of a generous heart. A heart that seeks no harm. These two especially. A generous heart and a heart that seeks no harm. That is a healthy sense of self. Then next, a heart that is sensitive to suffering, whether our suffering or other people's suffering. Because those are necessary for us to even care about wanting to end suffering. So all those are good, you know. Don't like, you know, throw a dirty bomb, you know, at ego and blast everything away, you know. No. Yeah. Melissa, please.
Oh, I just wanted to ask, what is the name or the title of that morning program that you're describing for us?
That's oh, on Facebook it just says daily practice.
Oh, okay. I mean, but like if I was gonna search for it on YouTube, are they on YouTube
I
or
don't
no?
know what playlist they have put it in.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, they're very organized in their playlists. So if you go
Right.
there now, I can't get there, but if you go there now, let me know uh, what you're seeing.
Okay, I can look for it.
Yeah, the playlists they are very disciplined. There are many good channels that have terrible playlists. I have bullied them into, being consistent with creating playlists. It might be part of the Gongchik study, something like that. I think it might be under that. If you go to the playlist for Drigong Dhammakirti YouTube channel.
Yeah. There's one that says formal practices.
No,
Yeah. Maybe it's the Gongchi.
read me the playlist.
Oh, gosh. Drops of wisdom, how to prepare for death,
Nope.
intro to Buddhism, brief Gongchik commentary.
Yeah, that one, brief Gongchik, I believe.
Okay.
Because there's an extensive Gongchik that goes for 120 classes, I think. So the brief Gongchik, the most recent ones, I think is probably put in there. Sometimes if there's short clips, they will turn up in the drops of wisdom. The drops of wisdom are short, like 4-minute, 10-minute.
Okay.
Yeah, that's where it is.
Is it the sung cleansing offering?
That's one of the practices we do, but Melissa is asking about, where the series that I've been talking about was occurring.
Oh,
So
okay.
it's slightly different. Yeah. And then there's that section, formal practices. Those are just recordings of different practices that we do, which includes, the 35 Buddhas. But as for this specific discussion that Dix brought to our attention, it's in the brief Gongchik playlist. Because this focus on that text, right? It's not actually Gongchik, but at the end of the Gongchik series, I have a few more days before I go to Nepal. So then I said, let's look at this chapter. Yeah. So this chapter pertains to karma. And this chapter, actually, the first half of the chapter gives an overall understanding of karma and specifically the 10 non-virtues and how each of the non-virtue, if you consistently habituate yourself with that, you end up in the hell realm, or you end up in the hungry spirit realm, or you end up in the animal realm. And then even if you have exhausted the karma of being born there and you're born into the human realm, and the types of problems that you will encounter and so on and so forth. So it has those types of details. And then we also looked at the definitions, what is the karma of killing? What is the karma of stealing? What is the karma of sexual misconduct?
Yes.
We looked at that as well. But this chapter, the second part of the chapter, the whole point of discussing about these 10 non-virtues and the different ways these 10 non-virtues then turn into undesirable conditions and situations. The whole point of this is to lead to the second half of this, which tomorrow I will start that section, is the benefits and the importance of taking these individual liberation vows, the first level of the 3 vows. Yeah. So specifically then the 5 precepts for lay people. It's interesting, there's the 10 non-virtues, but then insofar as the precepts is the 5 precepts. Yeah. So like under speech, the 5 precepts only covers not lying. Whereas among the 10 non-virtues, there are 3 other speech karmas that you have to watch out for. So far, I've not found any taking of the 10 precepts to cover the 10 non-virtues. I don't know why. Cannot explain. But the lay vows are just, the 5 precepts. And Venerable Thich Nhat Hanh has very beautiful teachings on the 5 lay vows. He calls it poetically, I don't know, I forgot what he calls them, like mindful trainings, I think. Yeah, he relates it to the training of mindfulness. So if you have interest in that subject, especially read Thich Nhat Hanh's very helpful explanations of how to keep the 5 lay vows. And the rationale for taking those vows, and how to support those vows, how to protect those vows. And then when I teach them or share them and discuss that topic, I'm always mindful and careful to navigate people away from moralism, moralistic, especially Judeo-Christian baggage. It's not a criticism of Judeo-Christian. It's just saying, we should not confuse the 2 different styles and strategies. Then you might inadvertently take reactive, right? What they say, like, if you take this medicine, you cannot take this medicine. Yeah, it's that. Yeah? Separately, and there are medicines that are, what do you say, complementary, and then there are medicines that will cause a what do they call it, reaction,
like contraindication.
Yeah, contraindication, so we want to be careful about that. Yeah, so also for future reference, if I'm talking about Judeo-Christian, I'm not like criticizing, I'm just saying, different medicines work differently. You don't want to like the idea of confession, like the principles of Buddhist confession and the principles of Catholic confession. Maybe the underlying principle or the effect is the same, but then how they go about it is different, And if you don't know what you're mixing, it could cause more misery. Yeah. So, and then if you have mastered both, then yes, then it'll be really good, Then you can really help a lot of people if you can master both. Then you know how to mix, and it can be very beneficial, especially in our context, which is not a predominant Buddhist context. Even if some of us Buddhists are delusional about, one of these days America will be Buddhist. No. At most, we are now maybe 2% of population. Yes.
I had a question, speaking of karma, about what kind of attitude is helpful in, considering the 6 realms, and in terms of karma, in terms of rebirth. There's this horribleness of the lower realms. And how to take this teaching, what kind of attitude take here that would be helpful.
Can you repeat that?
Yeah, I've always kind of not been clear about how to take the kind of cosmological teachings about reincarnation into the 6 realms and this vastness of having, an infinite number of reincarnations, and this threat of going to horrible places or even good places that really aren't that helpful in the long run.
Why not? Why
I
not?
mean, I mean, to take it, you were talking early on about,
Yeah. So why not? Why is it not helpful?
I'm not saying that it's not helpful. I'm saying what kind of attitude is helpful? I'm asking.
Oh, well, tell me what is not helpful.
Well, I guess literally you're telling that don't take it like the Christian hell.
Uh-huh.
Right.
Yes.
Don't take that literally.
Right. What else?
Uh, well, it still sounds pretty bad.
And so why is that a problem? That it sounds bad.
Maybe I just don't want to
I'm being
accept
an
it.
anthropologist now.
No, you are. Well, maybe I don't, I just don't want to accept that, I might spend 10,000 kalpas in a cold hell.
Yeah. Yeah. Uh, in Christian terms, evil is real. Hmm. People who have suffered in this life, ironically, it's easier for them to say, yeah, of course, there's hell realms. I've been through them. Of course, there's God realm. But we Americans are told that it's unseemly to say I'm in the God realm, but we are in the God realm. At least present company. Look around, we're in the God realm. Likewise, hell realm, not hard to find. There are people in America, even right now, in your community that's living in the hell realm. When you're in the hell realm, it's 10 kalpas. It's 50 eons, From generation to generation, you don't see any change that's going to come. It doesn't need to be measured with a ticking clock, 10 kalpas. Gods are oblivious to their God states. That's one of the faults described for those in the God realm. And from one perspective, from the perspective of others, gods are prideful. Gods don't necessarily go around thinking we're prideful, But for the non-gods, we are prideful beings because we don't even recognize the God realm that we are in. There's nothing wrong per se about being in a good place at all. In fact, the Buddha has no vendetta against the fact that you are in the God realm. But here the teachings, the cosmological teachings are saying even the God realms has its faults. And so we want to pay attention to its faults. Then even the hell realms, have its qualities. But to be able to see the qualities is very, very, very hard when you're in the hell realm. So they say in one of the past lifetimes of Buddha Shakyamuni, he was born in the hell realm. And the way that hell realm is described is that he was in a hell realm where everyone is forced into brutal hard labor. And then there are these demons, that will be whipping, with chains and spikes, the workers. And there was one worker next to him, who simply cannot push the cart anymore. And even though, he couldn't push Shakyamuni's past life, when they beat this person, he jumped on top, to protect that person. And he said, let me take his burden. The demons laugh at him and say, nobody can take anybody's burden. But it says that moment, caused him to pass away from the hell realms and to be born out of it. So those are the possibilities, but it's so rare. And the point is that only a being that in the future will become Buddha Shakyamuni could even come up with that kind of considering others in the midst of suffering. Hmm.
I have a
Infinite.
Go ahead. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Uh, it's really important, I feel, without needing to argue for the literalness of it, but to think in terms of infinite lifetimes, because the work that we do can be so tight, can be so focused, claustrophobic almost, that if you don't have this big container, you become very tight and paranoid. Yeah, hells exist. Sometimes don't need to go too far, and we'll find them.
And if I take the teachings literally, we've been in those realms lots of times, right?
Yes, even just from this morning, even since this morning, some of us may have gone to the hell realms.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I wanted to say to Kathy and Melissa, what I'm listening to right now is Gong Cheek, and it is Kenshin Nyingma Gelson. August 2nd, 2023, and it's about what is it about, Dr. Lye? Well, it's about 4 paths to Mahamudra. And it's excellent, 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 but it's under that Gong, CHIG. It's very, very good.
Thank you, Karen.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm going to have to leave. Always the days leading up to a departure, especially this departure is a long one, 2.5 months. Yeah, 3 weeks, 3 weeks pilgrimage in Nepal, 3.5 weeks of empowerment in India, receiving, and then 2.5 weeks or so in Malaysia with my family, and then come back middle November, then middle December to Peru, the Christmas program in Peru with His Holiness, then from Peru to Guatemala, traveling with His Holiness from Guatemala to Mexico. January 23rd, I come back to US. And then January 29th, His Holiness come to Asheville. So I have 6 days to get everything ready for him to come here. First, I send him to Florida, and then he comes up here. And then sometime in February, then things calm down a little bit. Don't have anything until from February to September, nothing.
Yet.
Well, I hope you have wonderful trips. And I was glad to see your friend won the election. I hope that works out well for him.
So you all remember that, huh? That story, that crazy story. Yeah. So we'll see what happens in Guatemala. And more challenges ahead, but a good person is at the head of these challenges. So lots of prayers and dedication that he remain good for the country, and that he and his family are safe from harm, and then he'll be able to bring some change, some good to the country. Friends who are there have said that, you know, the way they described it, the atmosphere and the excitement, I said, oh, it reminded me of the first time Obama was elected, you know. I think it's fair to say generally most people, even people who didn't vote for him, felt like, okay, maybe as a country we're making some progress. Then some of these people had biased regret later on, or non-biased regret even. But I think the atmosphere in Guatemala is like, yes, maybe there will be a chance of some good directions.
Yeah.
It also depends on how much the United States wants to back him or not back him, and back him in a way that is helpful and harmful. You know, the US has such powers. Nobody becomes or not become the president of Guatemala or El Salvador, or, you know, without the CIA's hand somewhere there. It'd be naive to think. So it's so in that sense, it's our karmas are wrapped up in their karmas. So we'll dedicate, you know, our good merit, dedicate the merit of all beings to the freedom from suffering of all beings, and achieving happiness, both temporary and long-term happiness. Yeah. So it'll be hard to meet on Sundays for me. It's more or less midnight over there. But I'll try to do some live teachings, live stream at other times of the day in the next 2.5 months. I don't know when and what yet. It all sometimes depends on, you know, if I'm busy with people, or, you know, or if there is time, and then when there is time, is there internet or not? So stay tuned.
Yes, we'll catch what we can.
Yeah,
And, I hope you have a wonderful time.
thank you. Yeah. Yeah, it'll be good. Now I just want to stay healthy, most important, kind of
Yes,
the basis. Then I can. Had a scare because I went to see some friends, like donors for the foundation. I drove up 8 hours to Northern Virginia on Monday, met with them a few hours, spent the night with them at their home. Then the next day, drove back down for 8 hours on Tuesday. So this is on Tuesday. And then Friday morning, the wife woke up feeling really bad and then tested positive for COVID.
Oh,
Oh,
Yeah, and now it's Sunday already, and I don't have any. I think I'm off the hook.
Good.
It's usually 48 hours before the symptoms is when they caught it, you know. And so that will be sometime on Tuesday. I left Tuesday morning, but still there's some, you know,
yeah.
but they're fine. They're fine, you know, at this point. For most people, COVID is a bad cold. So far I don't have, although my bee sting got kind of weird. I had to go to CVS Minute Clinic, so now I'm on antibiotics and steroids.
wow.
Yeah. First
Oh,
time I've experienced a bee sting that turned into something more this kind of concerning. I've been stung before in the past, and now I learned from this experience that each time you get a bee sting, it's hard to tell how your body will react. So this time it was not this past Tuesday, but two Tuesdays back, I was at a beach house, lake house, you know, family, and picnic table, wasn't paying attention, talking. I put my arm down and I got stung by, I think it was a yellow jacket. I lift it up and I see it there hanging on to my, but it already stung, you know. I'm like, okay, I had enough presence of mind to not swat it, and harm it. And so I just watch it and let it do its thing. I can feel the venom going in and all that. And then I'm like, okay, okay. And, and then it flew away, because I had read somewhere, I don't know, I guess it's only honeybees. Like if they lose their sting, they will die, I was like, okay, now take your sting and go with you. It flew off.
Yeah. Oh,
So yeah, I mean, it's painful, of course, but I didn't die from it. Then it got all swollen, For the next few days, it was swollen like that. This big patch, like that, like my.
oh,
Then I just applied, topical, and then it went down, 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 down. So even when I went to Virginia, it was down. It was, but you could tell that it's still swollen, but not red. Thursday morning, I woke up, a whole patch of red hives.
Oh,
And then where the sting was around it, there was like a circle that is purplish.
oh, no.
So
Oh,
like
no.
the toxin was still there or whatever,
Yes.
So I was like, okay, time to go, to like, urgent care or, but then I don't want to wait that long. Urgent care is always long. So I went to CVS Minute Clinic and saw a nurse practitioner. And then so he prescribed antibiotics and steroids, for the next week, 10 days. So much better now. Still a little itchy, but you see, not so bad now.
Not bad.
Anything.
So yeah, purifying karma.
Okay.
Being stung is the ripening of karma, and then how we then begin to relate to it can either lead to purification of more negative karma or creation of more negative karma. Does that make sense? Being stung itself is not the purification of negative karma, technically, to be more exact. When suffering turns up, it's not by itself purification. When suffering turns up, it's simply ripening. Yeah? It's the ripening of a negative karma. When negative karma ripens, and then how we react to it, how we respond to it, can either be neutral, as in nothing else, settled a debt, end of story. That would be, I call it, a neutral scenario. You can turn it into a positive scenario when you're stung, right? And then, or whatever, suffering turns up, and you use that occasion to recognize, this is the ripening of a negative karma. This is not the fault of the yellow jacket or whoever, whatever. And then on that basis, you think, whoever else, is experiencing such things, skin disease, psoriasis, all that, you begin to consider their suffering. And interestingly, one of the people who went with me to the lake house has psoriasis. I was joking with him. I said, I was like, Dongland got too serious. I said, like, so I mean, I did think, oh yeah, I just have a bee sting, and he has a condition that for years is like that. It must be so, So if you take that, and then develop some understanding, develop some empathy for others, then you're creating, virtue. So then out of the ripening of a negative karma, you can create virtue. Likewise, when some pleasant, welcome things happen for us, it's the ripening of a skillful action. Again, from there are three ways it can go. One is simply the neutral one. It has ripened, fine. You have neither created more happiness out of that situation, nor have you created suffering out of that situation for the future. Neutral. It can go the other way when happiness turns up, right? Then you get cocky. Ha! What is wrong with you? What is wrong with you? Why are you so miserable? Or in your happy state, you become careless. Then you create suffering. In your experiencing of happiness, you say, I want to share this. And I want to be sure that I continue to act in skillful and virtuous ways. And I want to share this happiness. Then the ripening of happiness, the ripening of virtue into happiness becomes the condition and the seed for the growth of goodness and virtue. Do all of this with an understanding and a context and a motivation that is beyond just yourself, but to take into consideration the whole picture and to dedicate this towards the attainment of enlightenment. That's when it becomes bodhisattva practice. Okay, tata.
Have a great
Thank you.
trip.
Yeah, thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Yeah, okay.